194 of the 20 Minute Tim's flagship podcast. I'm your host, Jamie, and I'm joined by Stephen.
What's happening?
And Melly.
Ahoy.
And Stephen, you asked what's happening. We have stretched our lead at the top of the league now. I'll tell you what, watching that game against Dundee didn't feel like it. It didn't feel like the sort of relaxing celebration. We're going top of the league and we're not being moved. It was bitty, it was difficult, it was stressful. It's been a bit, but to be honest, Stephen, since we're all sitting down with our pals, it's been a stressful Celtic week.
It's been an eventful one as ever. It's exactly the way we like it, sort of. But yeah, there were times during the Dundee game where I thought this is going to be another one of those games where we've been presented a golden opportunity thanks to a slip up from the Bears earlier in that afternoon, and I thought, we're going to do it again. We're going to pass this up, and we're going to keep the lead at 1 point. But thankfully, the big Gigi stood up.
Fucking right, he did. Melly, I was saying, I think it was, if Celtic had failed to capitalise on Rangers dropping points, that would have been the third time this season that Rangers dropped points, and we didn't go on to capitalise on it. But you know what? No point, ifs, mutts, and babies. Hey, Stephen, there's no point. What?
If mutts and babies.
There's no point talking about ifs, mutts, and babies, Melly, right? The truth is, the Adonis that is Giakoumakis stood up with that hat trick that you wanted,
yes,
on the pre-match portion of the At the Match podcast, and he bailed us out big time.
He did, and asked for a hat trick. I thought, look, Dundee at home, it's a chance for us to maybe get a few goals and him to build some confidence. Didn't quite expect them to get a couple of goals, but which was a bit annoying. But with Steve, he said, look, that would have been the third time we'd dropped points when Rangers had dropped points. That seems like a long time ago those happened, because it feels like this is a new team, even though we're in the same season, because we've moved on so much, we're playing well, and it was a victory in the end. But when you look at Celtic's form right now, bar the Bodo game, it's just win everywhere. So we're flying, but well, not playing brilliant the last couple of games. But if we can stretch a lead, not playing too well, take it every day of the week. And speaking about stress, the stress I got from this man on the way to the game was absolutely mental. Picked him up and he'd say, Rangers had just scored to make it one each.
Was he giving the "Are we there yet" patter every 2 minutes?
Right, he was saying, he was just watching it, and he said that he'd be astonished if Rangers don't win because they were all over Dundee United. And I said, I don't want to turn on the radio because I don't want to hear when if they score what it'll be like, because we'll just be gutted on the way to the game. So we didn't put it on. But instead of taking that on board, Stephen sat there on his phone refreshing it. Look, I was like, mate, what are you doing here?
I've got something to say about this, right? So I was listening to the Rangers, the end of the Rangers game on.
They made me put on the radio because he was
on BBC Sports Sound, right? And honestly, a couple of things, Sports Sound, we're just a couple of guys, world-class podcasters as we are, but we're not really like public service broadcasters. So a couple of things, a couple of tips if you're commenting on a game, right? If you're doing the old commentary in a football game, go to tell us what time it is when we're all sitting here sweating bullets about whether or not... Yeah. It was like, I needed time updates on how many minutes were left of this game as I heard about Dundee United's heroics, and I was travelling in the car with someone every 2 minutes, like, can you refresh that and tell me how long this game's gone? It was unbelievable. And then second of all, something that you pointed out, they don't tell you where the ball is.
No.
You just have to wait and see if somebody scores. It's
all just the raising and lowering of voices. You're having to kind of gauge where the hell the ball is.
To be fair to every single person that works on BBC Sports Sound, when you're watching your team about to drop points, it must be quite difficult to comment on the job in hand.
It was an exciting car journey up to Celtic Park, I have to say. And Melly is right. I made things a bit tense, I have to say. I was constantly refreshing this thing. But there's nothing quite like it, is there? There's nothing quite like it than the Huns dropping points when you're on the way to the game. It's absolutely terrific. I said to Melly that it's because of the era in which I grew up.
Oh, aye.
They never dropped points. They were brilliant when I was a wee guy, and Celtic were crap. So every time they dropped points, it was a celebration.
But it's not even that. It's the fact that this season, Melly just talked about that winning run we've been on, or there was 21 games unbeaten or something like that. We're just wiping the floor with absolutely everybody. No dropping points anywhere, but we're still only 3 points ahead of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we were 6 points behind a couple of weeks ago. We've managed to get 3 points, which is a good turnaround in such a short period of time. But I mean, we're really looking at going, we lose one more and it's so tight. It's so tight. And it is, but it's back to the old days when there is a title. It's been so long since we've had a proper title race on our hands here. We're really in the thick of it.
Yeah, and it's when you're looking at it, like last week we were talking about it, like Celtic, they can't just keep winning every game. There's going to be something. Maybe the Bodo game in there's the wee the wee drop off where you go, right, okay, that one. But in this league, we're playing all right, we're playing well in some games, and we're getting these victories. But then you're like that. There's 11 games to go.
Yes.
This season is getting to the business end, and well, I think now if Celtic win 9 of those 11 games, we'll be champions.
Well, it's, come
you
on.
and Giakoumakis
Yeah,
giving
know.
that patter just now.
Giakoumakis started the game up front. Like, I like the guy. I said it a couple of weeks ago, so I'm not just coming
You
on.
need to calm down.
I'm not just coming on the podcast. Now after he scores a hat trick, rescues the point, saying I want to have my babies. What I'm saying is, I like him. I like his work rate. I like his dig. He scored the perfect hat trick there. He had that sort of
Fine physique as well.
Oh.
Wow, that celebration.
I don't know what they're eating in Greece to produce people that look
Yogurt.
like that. Certainly, it's very different from what I'm eating anyway. So, I think he's a great player. He's given me shades of Vinegar in there as well. He's certainly a different option up front.
Yeah, Vinegar Hislink is he's a decent comparison, I suppose, because he is the sort of plan B striker, I suppose, of this squad. Whereas Vinegar Hislink was very much the big man of the big man and little man partnership with him and Scotty McGhee.
I just mean the style, the way that he gets in the box, puts himself about.
I can definitely see it. He's we said it before the game as well when we were on the way. If you look at that front three, the Giakoumakis, Maeda and Jota, it's a handful, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, a big cliche and all that, but it's a lot to think about for the defence because they're all completely different players, and Giakoumakis offers something that none of our forward line do.
There was doubts over him, wasn't there? There was definitely doubts over him when he first joined because of the Eredivisie top scorer travelling thing that we've discussed. Then obviously there was the performance and the penalty miss, all that hanging over him, but nobody's talking about that missed penalty now.
Well, not only that, there was also the fact that he had one good season in his entire career. It wasn't like okay. It wasn't like decent season, amazing season. It wasn't like that. It was just nothing. And then this enormously,
the hot hand.
Yeah, basically just this enormously productive season out of absolutely nowhere. So that raised suspicions, including me as well, because I looked at that and he's got 26 goals or whatever it was in the Netherlands. The team got relegated. And you looked at his record and he scored. There was a lot of hat tricks and fours and all that in there against the kind of weird teams. And I thought, this is maybe just kind of fluffed numbers a wee bit, but the guy's been really good. It took a long time, though. It took a long time to get to this point because I remember there were various points of this season where I thought, what is the point of this guy? Because he's not playing, he's not fit. It's taken him ages to get up to match fitness. He's coming in and he's looking okay. But I mean, what's that? 7 goals? 7 goals he's got in maybe a dozen appearances. I've not looked into that.
It's
but
everything as well. It's the work rate. And everything that he brings to his all-round game. Like Stephen called him Plan B. And I'm looking at the squad and I'm thinking, out of everyone that's come in, Kyogo's obviously, a superstar, and we're waiting for him to come back. Maeda came in and we're all kind of expecting him to be more or less in the mould of Kyogo, given that his record in Japan and he comes over here and all that sort of stuff. But I think Giakoumakis is bringing more to the team right now than Maeda is. In fact, I'm beginning to wonder, and we'll get on this when we talk about the overall performance of the Dundee game, but I wonder if the performance against Dundee kind of suffered because we're trying to either shoehorn Maeda into the team or get him minutes. Whereas I think Giakoumakis, Jota, and Abada up front, Stephen recoiled, and I could get a job for the BBC right now. And Abada up there, I think that might be the stronger front three,
Right now, I'd say so. Maeda, you're just kind of waiting for him to kick off, really. But again, he's got 4 goals. He's getting the goals. But with Giakoumakis at the weekend, we've been so impressed with his performance recently. But it's been the dirty stuff he's been doing. It's the tracking back. It's the tackling. It's the pressing, working away. And you're like, we're getting everything from you. But it's just that technique we're worried about. He's had some woeful shots and you're just thinking, are you just going to be one of those guys who's a nuisance up there but not a goal scorer? Kind of blew that away at the weekend because all the goals that you can look at them all individually. We spoke about it before that he's brilliant at getting in at the front post. 2 of the goals were him in at the front post, but the first goal was very pleasing because some of those shots he's hit have been some of the terrible, but with that one, the turn and the finish was absolutely brilliant. It's sort of overhead, side on finish. It was a striker's goal, one of those ones you think that could have went anywhere. You could have lashed at that, but he got over it and he finished it with with aplomb, and then the other two tap-ins, but that is exactly where you want your striker.
Yeah.
And
Oh, that one, I think you're doing him a disservice calling that third goal a tap-in. The way he attacked it at the front post.
oh, but you know what I mean. Like, these balls that
Yeah,
are pretty easy
okay.
for him. It's not anything further back, so it's just right in there. But when I was watching the game back, he got a hat trick. Didn't really do much else in the game, but none of the Celtic strikers do, because we keep them right up and pin the defence back. So fair enough. But what I like about him is he's getting these goals, he's getting into these areas, but also he got a hat trick. And when you watch it back, there was so many balls flashed across the box. You're thinking, see, if he was absolutely flying, he could have had 5 or 6 goals.
I've got to admit, Stephen, that's one thing that was doing my nut in a wee bit. Like, Celtic's approach to the game, like, we weren't brilliant in that game. In fact, I thought in some periods we were quite poor, and this relentless crossing. And what was getting me was, right, crosses are fine, okay, that you can put the cross in, you can create chances off the back of them. We did, and we scored a couple. But the amount of times the ball would go right over, Giakoumakis would be attacking the front post, but there's nobody at the back post.
Yeah.
And there was 4 or 5 clear-cut chances. You're like, see if somebody's gambled at the back post, they would have been goals. They would have been goals. And it's something that we see Abada do, but nobody was doing it on the opposite side. If Abada's not doing it on his side of the pitch, you're not seeing Jota or whatever do that.
There was a couple of moments in the Bodo Glimt game, which we'll come on to a wee bit later, where James Forrest came off the bench and actually did all right. As which we've been talking to him to death recently, and he's not really played much this week, so he's got a week off the relentless criticism.
Yes.
But when he came on, he actually put in a couple of decent crosses, but they were marginally overhit. They were back post crosses, and there was just nobody there. There was just nobody taking that gamble at the back post. But Giakoumakis has been great. What I've noticed about the goals is that they're all, every single one of them has been sort of one-touch opportunistic goals. It kind of, this is going to be an awful comparison, right? But Ayeti was kind of like that. When he came into the team at first and he looked really good, he scored like 5 goals in his first 8 or 10 games or something like that. Yeah, they were all...
That's Albion Ayeti, by the way, in case you've forgotten.
Swiss ace Albion
Yes.
Ayeti, Swiss marksman Albion Ayeti, currently languishing somewhere around Celtic. But when he came in, it seems like about 10 years ago now, he actually did look good. And you're right, it was the zero thought, just instinctive, first time lashing it into the goal. And Giakoumakis has been very much like that. See on his name, right? I keep slagging people for calling him Giakoumakis, right? It absolutely does people's heads in as well on Twitter. But it's now getting to the point where I've spent so much time ridiculing the wrong version that the two have kind of become conflated in my mind, basically. So
It's poisoned your mind.
Yeah, it's basically it's like when I saw a video of someone saying Stanima over and over again, talking about Stanima, and now I actually have to be deliberate about trying to say the right version now. So I might end up shooting myself.
Did you catch that? Even when he went to say the right version of stamina, he said Stanima. You didn't even catch yourself. BBC were good at that as well.
Yep.
The sports scene, I think I heard on sports scene 4 or 5 different attempts at Giakoumakis. My favourite being Giacomatic.
Right, I know that I'll butcher names on here on occasion, but what I do is I do my best based on using almost all, if not all, of the letters presented to me, and they're handily written on the guy's back as he's out there running about. So I make my best stab at it.
Plus, if you're a commentator on football matches, it's your job to get the names right. I'm convinced it's like some sort of ignorance, like refusal to learn the guys. It's no more complicated than, say, Octor Mukti.
And why can
or
everybody say
McGlinchey or something like that.
Why can everybody say Jackie McNamara, but you can't say Giakoumakis? Is there that S? Oh, that S is too foreign for me, mate. I can't say that.
Absolutely no having it. People in the comments, though, see if we want to talk about pronunciations, just wait till I start talking about Rogic or Rogic or whatever. I just can't even, over the course of one podcast, I give it a couple of stabs. What did you make of Celtic's approach to the game, Ellie? Because the performance, goals aside and all this laughs and fun we're having as we do in the podcast, it wasn't the best.
Yeah, it's a strange one. When I was watching it back, there's some points you think we were good, but because you're at the game or you're watching it live, you're putting this emphasis on it because this is a chance to go 3 points clear. We need to take this, and you're sort of every chance that's missed, it gets to you because you just want to see your team win and play well. We did do all right in parts, but performance could have been better. But again, it's a Sunday game at home against a bottom of the league team that are just going to sit in all day and try and frustrate us, and it's after a European game where we had a wee bit of a confidence dent, so we couple of changes here and there. the performance wasn't great, but wasn't terrible either. And when you're looking at it again, Dundee scored 2 from set pieces. We'll probably come on to that. And then they had one chance where it went the ball inside the left back cross and the guy hit it wide at the front post. Apart from that, they had absolutely nothing. But we just seemed to let them into the game in these opportunities. But like I was saying earlier, when the later the game was on, it didn't feel like the Livingston game or the St Mirren game or Dundee United games earlier in the season. You think, not going to be a goal here because...
So did you have faith? Did you think we were going to pull it out the bag?
Yeah, I thought so because we were just pressing them back and we had options and even we could make subs. Like, you're bringing on a Maeda, top goal scorer. Like, that's the sort of thing we can do now. So we've had the games against Ross County, against Dundee United. We've had to get the late goals. So it's not as if we're going, oh, are we going to get a goal? But even then, this one wasn't late. And as soon as it went in, you're like, well, I think we'll win the game now, just to not give away corners. But see, I know we've kind of moved on a wee bit, but the feeling when that ball went in is amazing because you're just like, that's it, we've got it, we're going to win. And I've never seen Stephen do so much emotion. I said, because he sits in front of me, I said it on At The Match, like, no, when Andy Dufresne comes out the other side of the jail and he's in the water and he's just doing
Is that how you felt, Stephen?
I did.
Did you feel like that game was crawling through a tunnel of shit until you broke out at the end of it, that Giakoumakis goal?
Exactly. I had gone through that entire film right up until that point. It was tremendous. What was it, 86th minute? I think we eventually got the breakthrough. I was starting to wobble a little bit. I was starting to get... And see, the thing is, the atmosphere gets awful tetchy at these points as well, and understandably so. It's a tight title race and all that, and there's no excuses for us to not be going out and battering them on a Sunday. When you've been given, as much as Ange didn't care about it, it pains to dismiss any talk of Rangers results influencing Celtic in any way. That's absolutely fine. That's his prerogative, but it is going to influence the fans regardless. There's no getting away from that. There's no way. Everyone wasn't turning up to that game fully aware of what had happened at Tannadice in that game and thinking
the players know as
hammering.
well. I know Ange's trying to keep a lid on it and all that sort of stuff, and he makes some good points about how he's always been the same, isn't he? The league's not over, nothing's awarded just now, blah blah blah. He makes some good points, but you're right that everybody knows, the fans know, the players will know, the anxiety starts to creep in, and the thing about it is Dundee sacked a manager, brought in Mark McGhee.
Bounce? Is it a bounce, is it?
Look, Stephen, Melly, I know we have, over the course of this podcast, referred to Mark McGhee as a jobber, and we have given him petals, but I feel bad for him. I do feel bad for him because he has walked in here as a complete heel, and the heat that he is getting from all quarters at the moment, every time he's on the radio, every time he's on the TV, the guy's having to defend himself, and he's basically just reading out his CV. Even when he's asked about, how did you feel today? He went, I remember back when I was manager of Wolves and I nearly got them promoted, or was it manager of Reading when I nearly got them promoted? It's one of these 964 games I've managed. He's reading off his LinkedIn profile every time he's
Steve Bruce, isn't he? He's our Steve Bruce.
I just feel bad for him. I feel like it's gone too far. But there is no getting away from the fact
that's going to happen when your best mate gives you a job and you're banned for 6 of the 12
that's
games,
what I was about to say. There is no getting away from the fact that Dundee sacked a guy that was apparently well liked. They brought in Gordon Strachan's mate, and he has to spend the next 6 games in the stand watching his team. That should work in our favour, though. We shouldn't be conceding 2 goals to a team under those circumstances. To a team, as you say, Melly, more or less bottom of the league. The goals were poor.
Yeah, there's no getting away from it. I said just last week that it's impossible to blame last season's set piece thing on this current team, and then they go and concede 2 and mug me right off. So I'll keep my mouth shut about that in future. But
you should have seen him the other day.
It's nothing to do with last season, but at the same time we kind of keep conceding these, and they were really, really basic as well. It wasn't like against Aberdeen. I came away from that thinking, right, that was well worked stuff there. That can happen. Teams concede set pieces. It's impossible to close it off altogether. And their Rangers conceded one at the weekend as well, and that's what did for them. The Aberdeen was well worked stuff. There was a lot of kind of inbox screening and blocking off of runs and all that. Right, that's fine. But you watch those ones against Dundee back, and you're like,
I think it was their second goal. I think we spoke on a tactics podcast or a scouting podcast, which is a thing we do for Patreon, about player profile last season and how there wasn't an awful lot of aggressive ball-winning aerial threats in either box for Celtic last season. And I think we're in a similar boat just now, because one of the Dundee goals, can't remember if it was the first or the second, someone screened Matt O'Reilly. It was his guy that scored at the back with the first goal. But he screened him just by putting his hand out. And you're thinking, if that's a defender, if that's Carter Vickers, if that's somebody a bit stronger, that's no stopping you. Do you know what I mean? You're making sure you're there first. It was very, very soft. And I think there is an element creeping in where maybe we're just a bit too confident. Where Matt O'Reilly doesn't feel he needs to bust a gut to win that ball because he thinks someone else will get it. And there's a wee bit of responsibility needed at the back.
Well, he and Hatate weren't too clever for the Aberdeen set pieces either. Yeah. They kind of went to sleep a wee bit. So they're brand new players. That it's going to take them time to get up to speed with these things. As good as they've all been, I mean, we've spoken at length about these guys and the impact they've had already. It's maybe going to take a wee bit of time to get used to that. The first goal, he was actually facing the wrong way by the time the ball arrived, which looked very odd. It was kind of Shane Duffy-esque stuff. Remember that meme of him?
I've deleted all that from my mind.
And that's in Sparta Prague.
He was
back in the day
at the weekend, wasn't he?
Was he?
Duffers, with his own teammate.
Oh, goodness me. But yeah, O'Reilly hasn't been too clever on that. But then you look at the second one, it's nothing to do with naive brand new players. That's like established centre halves, and the guy just arrives between the two of them and nods it in under very little pressure. Marvin Bartley made an interesting point on that about on that particular free kick on Sports Scene about how Celtic's defensive line for that set piece is awfully far out. So if you kind of swing the ball into the area between that line and the goal, because there's such a distance, basically everybody's running towards the goal at the same time. It's just like a 15-man charge towards the goal. If you put the ball in there, it's going to be very difficult to get it back out of there, regardless of what way you're facing. So in a way that puts the advantage in Dundee's boat there. It puts the advantage in their boat there.
The corners thing is probably more frustrating for Celtic fans because it does feel like we concede a lot from them. And
is it because we feel that we concede a lot from corners, but also feel like we can't score one?
Oh, that's what exactly I was going to say, because the Bodo Glimt game, like that, there was one corner we got and Jota passed it straight to their player, right to him.
Comical,
so the fact that Celtic aren't doing very well at set pieces. I think Man United, 140 attempts they took from corners to score before the weekend. Not in the one match, but obviously. But so you don't often score from them, but you have to defend them better, because when we're looking at Celtic, we've played really well recently, but in the goals we've conceded domestically, it's all been set pieces, and that has been the Aberdeen game where we managed to get a goal back. Both games you won 3-2, but you can't go into games all the time giving teams that advantage where they could possibly get a goal from a corner, because at one point it will slip up. We are playing well now enough to score goals, but that's not going to happen every game. And again, looking at the game as a whole, we didn't concede any chances, but if you're going to concede simple goals from set pieces, it will cost you at some point. So we need to cut it out, because if we do, we barely concede chances, so teams won't score against us, which means we should win.
Well, yeah, if we're limiting the chances, as you say, we hardly ever concede any chances. But I think the part of the problem is, I mean, if you look at our squad, Stephen, how many guys do you trust to get a good clearance on a corner in the box, like attack it? You've got Carter Vickers, undeniable. Joe Hart is pretty good, although I don't know how good he is coming for crosses. Maybe Starfelt. I'm looking through the rest of the team and I'm like, Giakoumakis, maybe, if he's playing.
It depends who plays, because when you watch, if you are picking what you'd maybe say is our strongest defence, it'd be probably Taylor and Juranovic as fullbacks. Not going to get much there.
Them, no.
Yeah.
If Kyogo's fit, he plays up front, so you don't have Giakoumakis. So you could be looking at defending set pieces with only Carter Vickers and Starfelt. Maybe if you've got O'Reilly in midfield a bit high, because even if we've got guys like Beaton and Rogic playing, they're not good at heading the ball anyway. So the amount of goals Beaton's cost us by just not marking MD. So it's a difficult one. But what do you do then? Do you just go out and buy big players? Because that's not the way we're going to play. So we have to look at ways where we can stop this and don't get blocked, don't get the runners doing it. I still think we only leave one person up front. I'd maybe put two up front just so they have to
limit the numbers they can have the box. There's no denying we do analyse these set pieces. Celtic do. I know there's rumours out there Celtic don't do it. They absolutely do. They do. And I think, Stephen, when you're talking about when we take that high line, it's kind of like trying to play a sort of pseudo offside trap sometimes, isn't it? Or you're trying to get guys caught out and it just didn't work. And in the Dundee
Well,
game.
what that takes is reliance on Scottish officials to get it right.
Well, that's it.
what
And
you're
if
dealing with there.
look, I don't know if MD. We're a Celtic podcast. We don't really focus too much on what happens with Rangers. So if you don't know that Rangers drop points at the weekend, all you need to do is like open a newspaper or listen to BBC Sports Sound, and they'll talk about referees.
Twitter search VAR.
Yeah,
That'll
yeah.
help you.
Because
But we've been talking about referees all season and told
just
to
got
shut
on
up.
with it. I just got on with it. It's the way to know Rangers drop points at the weekend is because everyone's talking about referees all of a sudden. And my favourite thing at the moment is Rangers fans and Rangers minded pundits going, we need to start talking about this. Our dignified silence has lasted. Hey, lads, you wrote a letter to the SFA after your first red card in 2 years. You were screaming about it. Did you see Charlie Mulgrew? Charlie Mulgrew, for those looking just over Stephen's shoulder, you might see it. Forever immortalised because I love the man. And do you know what? I'm going to do this is day one of me asking Charlie Mulgrew to come on this podcast. Did you see his interview in Sports Scene?
You've made that up. It's hilarious.
Just absolutely never a pen. Absolutely brilliant. But the thing is, it just shows you how tight this is, Stephen. You know, these wee marginal calls in games. I mean, Rangers should be beating Dundee United without the help of a referee or a penalty. These wee calls in the games, they can cost you a lot in this league.
Yeah, and Brother Madden will not have been popular down the lunch the other night. Definitely not. Goodness me, that's a big failure from him.
So he'll be not uploading any pictures on his Instagram account this week, this celebrity ref.
No, definitely. Oh, look, it's a terribly boring subject at this point now, Scottish referees, and we could literally dedicate an entire hour's podcast to it every week, basically. But it's so tiresome. But
they're crap, though.
Yeah, they are.
That's it. The thing is, they're crap, right? The referees are crap. But the difficulty or the issue I have is Celtic complain about that daft refereeing decisions. They're told just to go on with it.
Yep.
Oh, you need to go on with it. There was a couple of weeks ago, they had the big debate on Sports Sound where Craig Levine, a man who has suffered at the hands of bad refereeing, was saying, I don't know what happens. Somebody needs to explain to me what happens, because if a referee sees something and he doesn't make the decision and it benefits a team, then he must be incompetent. And the panel were having none of you cannot call referees incompetent. This week, would Rangers suffer? Oh, we need to have a word about these referees. Can we bring VAR in? Should we have more referees?
Full time.
I know it's the disparity in coverage. When Rangers are affected negatively, that's all you hear is referees. Melly, another thing just before we leave the Rangers game. I've been meaning to make this prediction on the podcast for a while, but my prediction is that Aaron Ramsey will not start 10 league games.
Aye.
He has 11 league games left. I did see Stephen, and I want you to talk because I've been talking for way too long now. They said the greatest British signing since Gaza. I think Gaza today is fitter than Aaron Ramsey today.
It may well be. He still looks pretty game, Gaza. I've not seen him for a long time, in fairness, but we sat here when Aaron Ramsey signed and said, do you know what? Big old brackets, big old like caveat here. If he gets fit, he could be some player for them. Turns out the first part of that was virtually impossible, so there was no point in talking about it.
Reluctant entirely to write him off, Melly, because
he's
a good player, but sometimes these signings arrive in Scottish football, right? For either us or Rangers, they basically do nothing.
Yeah.
For the whole time they're here, except that one Glasgow derby where they absolutely run the show, like Roy Keane, for example, where they absolutely run the show. Now I'm like, something in the back of my mind, it's like, just be careful what you wish for with Aaron Ramsey, because if he turns it on in one of these games, you're like, oh no, you know, if we get a
Janino
draw.
was the same when in fact, that was his debut actually against Rangers, and he was brilliant, and that was it.
Yeah, you see that quite a lot. So, I mean, we're not going to get that off of Diallo because he's chucked it.
Just see the bit where he called himself for offside. He called himself offside. Somebody played him through, and he just kind of went like, "Nah, I'm offside." And then everyone was like, "What are you doing?"
Ryan Kent was furious about it. But look, we need to be. We can laugh and joke about it, Melly, and we are going to laugh and joke about it. But there are fine margins in this league.
Oh, aye. That's the thing, as you said earlier. Look, we've been playing so well. We just seem to be winning game after game, but it is only 3 points, and we do have the better goal difference. But that's one loss that could swing at any point. So we just need to do what Andrew's saying and just concentrate on ourselves now. Because see, now we're not relying on MD else before. When we come back from January, like, right, we've got a game against them, we could take it down to 3 points, but we're relying on other teams to take something off them. Now we're not. It's all in our own hands now. In this form, you kind of think, oh, it can't continue. But Celtic can win 9 games in a row in the league. can't they?
Don't say things like that, Melly.
Well, if you we just need to go back to what we did, not last season, but the season before, one game at a time and tick them off. And we've been doing that recently. And Stephen's mentioned that a couple of times over the course of this season. There's going to be loads of games like that Dundee game littered throughout the season where you win by the odd goal, but that is why you win leagues, because you win those games rather than draw them. So even when we're not playing brilliant, we're still getting wins now, and even when we do play, we're sparkling. So if we can just get that balance back, we possibly go out of Europe this week as well. So that might give us a wee break in between games as well and Kyogo and Turnbull might be back soon, so there's options there. So it's good to now. We just need to keep winning, because boy, oh boy, I will lord it up if we win the league this season.
Just one game at a time, but he's already talking about winning the league. He's frightening the shit out of me with this part.
Giakoumakis has got in my head, man.
Poison in our minds. See, when you're saying that about how it's kind of in Celtic's hands, we need to win a certain amount of games. I think that's what Giakoumakis meant. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, he is rather controversial. Yes, I think we'll win the championship, which was very unfortunate after the game. But part of me thinks, right, where possible, just shut up and go on with it, right? But at the same time, I'm not going to wring my hands about it. See the amount of people have been saying, "Oh, this is the motivation Rangers need."
Yeah,
why?
Some journalist did say, I can't remember. I would be playing this to the Rangers. Now, imagine that Gio walks in. You heard what Giakoumakis said. Gets his wee phone out. I think Celtic have. You just must be raging at that. The players would just look at him like, all right, okay.
You're hard.
I know.
I mean, they should have the motivation to win the league anyway without Giakoumakis stirring things up, pinning that up to the dressing room wall and all that.
It'll just be Twitter. It'll be brought back up if Rangers do win the league. But I wish he hadn't said it. But at the same time, you're like, do you know what? Good. If the players believe they're good enough to go and win the league, because look at the state of us. At the start of the season, you're like, how are we going to get through this season we'd lost 3 out of our first 6 games, 3 away games on the trot. And you're like, what is going to happen this season? Now we've turned the tide. We've went from 6 points behind to 3 points.
How long's that been? What, 2 weeks? Just 3 weeks or something? How long's that been?
Middle of January, so just over a month.
Jesus Christ, what a turnaround. Look, we have sort of tried to balance the Dundee talk between how good the goals were and how the performance was and all that, Stephen. Is there anything you would change, though, after the game, looking at that, knowing that the title race is still very close, knowing that we win these 9 games, we need to go on the winning run and keep winning? Is there anything you're looking at that Dundee game going, look, we need to improve in this area, drop this guy out, bring this other guy in, change this up?
Well, I think the fullbacks was the thing going into it, because Taylor came out, which really surprised me, actually. He had a terrible game against Bodo, but I think Ange, by and large, trusts him quite a lot, and I didn't expect him to come out the team, but I think Ralston was great, to be honest. I think he had a great performance and a crucial contribution with Big Gigi's third goal.
Yeah.
The fullbacks don't really concern me. I'm starting to wonder if we've got a couple of problems out wide, though.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, I think we've got a couple of problems, despite being stacked in numbers in terms of players who can fill these positions. I don't know if anything's necessarily working out wide just now. Throwing a lot of things at the wall, and I don't know if necessarily things are really working, because Jota, I think he was desperately poor against Bodo, but I think he was better on the right. I don't know if that's his best position either. Kind of, as you maybe alluded to earlier on, kind of shoehorning Maeda into the team.
So. I think there's a bit of that
to try and get him minutes. So I think I've got my eye on the wings just now. I think Abada comes back in for the next game, right enough. I think you just go back to Abada and Jota, find some minutes for Maeda elsewhere, maybe through the middle, but you kind of drop Giakoumakis after that. But yeah, the wings are starting to have a little bit of concern for me.
I'm the same. I think it's come this summer, and I know it's a while away yet, but ideal world, you sign Carter Vickers and Jota, because they've both been brilliant. I'll just quickly see Carter Vickers. He's sort of coming into his own as a Celtic player. The celebrations after every goal was class. He was grabbing on Giakoumakis and giving him the old dig. Then he boots the ball into the stand for one of them, and then jumps over and's going, fucking yes, when they score. So he's coming into his own. But
spot on impression.
Really?
It's the accent in it. But with Jota, obviously get him signed up because he's brilliant, but I still feel Jota and Abada good, but we need somebody else of the same sort of quality or something different, because Forrest hasn't been doing it this season. Mikey Johnson's injured again, and I don't quite think Maeda's a wide player.
No, I don't really
through the middle.
Maeda for me, I just wonder if we're still no used to maybe finding his runs or something. He does a lot of running about. He's scored a couple of goals, admittedly none of them have been absolutely brilliant.
Don't forget, he's got 5 men in front of him and he's still called offside as well.
That was that's another one. That's one of these decisions you're like, the lino must have been like thinking about what he's going to have for dinner tonight, and then notice like, Jesus, just do it and it's done.
a total punt. Maeda, I'm relaxed about Maeda just now. I don't think he's been playing great. I think he was quite poor against Aberdeen. I don't know if he's contributing again. He's getting goals. He's making himself busy all the time. He's constant movement. He's constantly making runs and working very hard. But it kind of goes to what I was saying last week about how, maybe a lot has been happening this season. We've had a lot of players come in and hit the ground running. We've had Jota, who's been brilliant. Kyogo, we know the list by now. Basically, every signing has come in and been brilliant. But I feel like that has hindered the opportunities for players to just come in and settle in. I feel like we've kind of done away with the idea that players need a wee bit of bedding in time, and he's only been here for about a dozen games.
Plus, he deserves an enormous amount of credit, I suppose, for finishing a season, then coming straight into another season and being 6 games. And I can kind of see why the manager plays him, but I just think it maybe upsets the balance a little bit. The reason I ask you what you would change about the Dundee United game is because I want to know what we need to do to win these European games. I mean, what happened against Bodo? That to me looked Celtic recently. There was the Rangers game and the Motherwell game, and I think the performances since then have sort of taken a dip. But that Bodo game, I'll be honest, it was giving me flashbacks of last season, Melly.
It's a strange one because Celtic started the game well. We got in behind and the ball flashed across, and their left back sort of nearly put it in his own net, but managed to clear it for a corner. And you think, right, good start. But then when you've seen them getting the ball and passing, you're like, oh, hold on a minute, this is a good team because they're very slick on the ball. And they managed to get the goal, and it was a poor goal for Celtic to lose. And you're like, oh, this is a good team. But we were speaking it just before we started recording. We don't get tested like that at all domestically, and for it to concede that goal. But it was a strange game. Celtic didn't play well, didn't play terribly, but conceded 3 goals without conceding chances again. They were just ruthless in the attack, and they got an early goal within the first 5 to 10 minutes, and a goal within 10 minutes of the restart at half time, and they scored right after we scored, killing all momentum with Celtic. So we didn't ever get into the game. We had a decent enough start, but then a couple of minutes later we're behind. You're coming out at half time, right, come on boys, and you're another goal down, you get a goal back, and then bang, they score again. It's just like, it was a bad night at the office for Celtic. It didn't seem to come off for us. And said before the game when we were looking at the lineup, and the thing we picked out was Rogic in there with O'Reilly.
There was definitely selection problems, I think.
I don't like the balance of that, and I said to Stephen at the game before they'd even scored the first goal that Rogic is blowing already, and there was just so much space in the midfield. Now, it's not all Rogic's fault, but I just feel the balance was be better if it was Hatate and Rogic, or Hatate and O'Reilly. But with Rogic and O'Reilly in there, seen it a couple of times so far, and it's not really worked for us.
Happy New Year from our friends over at Manscaped. The ball has officially dropped, but that doesn't mean you have to drop the ball on your balls. It's time to bring sexy back in 2022 and step up your game with the Manscaped Performance Package 4.0. Join 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped to help them ring in the new year with the right tools for the job. Go to manscaped.com, use discount code TIMS for 20% off and free shipping. It's a new year and a new you, and a new you means, Stephen,
new, freshly shorn balls.
Yes.
That's yep, down there. Let's get it all fixed, gentlemen. It's 2022. Time to let go of that thatch.
The read says a new you means no pubes. More succinct than what Stephen did. And the read also says the host is to talk about what new grooming routines they will try in 2022. And do you know what? I'm looking at you guys. You guys are pretty in good shape. You're pretty trim, Melly, pretty active. Stephen, pretty active. So I've decided it's time dust off the old boxing gloves. I'm going to start looking after myself. I'm getting old, Stephen.
Yep.
We're not getting any younger. So I'm going to start taking care of the skin as well. So skin, fitness, and hairlessness is all part of that package. So if you would like to trim your balls and have them looking lovely, manscaped.com, discount code TIMS, free shipping, 20% off, manscaped.com, discount code TIMS. I think part of the thing for me, Stephen, 2 things. I think the perception of Bodo Glimt didn't help.
Yeah,
I think Bodo were a good team, as
Yeah.
Melly said. Now, we'd assumed that the fact that they were early or in pre-season, the fact that they'd lost a lot of players, there was a bit of squad churn there, we thought maybe they won't be so good anymore. But the fact of the matter is they were still good.
Yeah,
If we'd played Bodo right after they'd beat Roma with that and got that result, we think, well, we would never think we were going to beat Bodo. We thought they were a good team rather. Secondly, I think the issue is the step up in quality, right? So when we're playing week in, week out, I know every team in Scotland does this, and Rangers getting that result in Europe didn't help the perception of our result. But when you look at the sort of the slack passing, the way the defence was 6s and 7s for one goal, switched off another goal, you can survive that in Scotland. But see, against a decent European outfit like Bodo, you just don't survive it.
Yeah, well, that's there's been a lot of debate about whether or not it's the fault of Scottish football that we come a cropper in Europe, and I think like people obviously bristle at that because like, it's no our fault that Celtic go out and shit the nest in Europe, just because we've got far less resources than you, so you can't really blame the opposition. But where I do agree with it to an extent is that we're simply not punished for those things in domestic football. Now, I've been talking quite a lot. He didn't start this game, and that's been a source of debate as well. Hatate didn't start, but what I've been talking about a lot with Hatate is that he gives the ball away all the time. Yeah. But I'm okay with that because he's always trying to make things happen. But this is just an example. It's not this particular game. But if you do that in Europe, you will be ruthlessly seized upon, and that's what Bodo were good at. I find myself wondering why these teams are always bigger, stronger, and faster.
And the players cost pennies compared to what we pay.
It's kind of like the Copenhagen thing all over again. But
it was very like Copenhagen.
Yeah, it was actually. There was a sort of perception that we could just go out and sign their players. I jokingly tweeted, sign that left back in a sort of arrogant, obtuse way, we could just go and handpick them right out of that team. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of the time, by the time that they're found by Bodo, they put in the performances in Europe, and they're moving up their next club, we, in all likelihood, maybe can't afford them. I don't know. But that Bodo team, Melly, they were just like, it was. I think what hurts me quite a lot about these results is there's an element of, I want us to be Bodo. I want us to be the sort of up and coming, trendy European outfit that is catching everyone's eye with this trendy manager and the slightly shite but good strip as well. I want us to be that.
Well, sorry to jump in there. What you want as well is for Europe to look upon a game like that and for investigations to take place and for them to find out that Celtic are just really well run. That's the thing. They're just so well run. They get the recruitment right. They get
this manager they've got. He's
I want that about us for a change.
Do you not think we're on the path to that? But because
I feel like we're on the path to that, yes. But I also feel like we are the team that help other teams get discovered at all times. Every time a team beats us, people start going, what about that Bodo Glimt? What about them? What about them? I'm like, oh my God, not this
Cluj.
again. Cluj. You're like, what about Cluj? They're going places.
Yeah, I get what you mean there. In the Bodo game, when you're looking at Celtic, we're at the start of this, but whereas Bodo, yes, they did lose a lot of players and brought a couple of players in, but there's players, I think 2 of the players that they replaced with came from within the club. So this style of play, the manager, the way they do everything is embedded in that club. Celtic are just at the start of that.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about their manager. They know exactly how they're going to play, so I'm hoping that Celtic will get there at some point. But something Stephen was saying as well was that, look, last year in this competition, well, in the Europa League, we were getting battered by Sparta Prague. And he said, look, a year on, we're doing quite well in Europe. It's not even a year. We're like 8 months on from into the season and we're doing well. Now, I'm not going to say, you get a free pass for this, because I think Celtic could have played much better.
Well, that's it. Sorry to jump across, but the thing that we can like sort of play this down all we like, we were this, we were that, it was different. But the fact of the matter, what annoyed me the most was it was all that fast-paced, closing, 1-2 touch stuff, the stuff that we've seen and we've enjoyed from Ange in the last couple of months. It just wasn't there against Bodo. It just wasn't there. And it's not like there was glimpses of, oh God, we're attacking, then they catch us. Admittedly, the third goal more or less killed things. But there was just like none of that Ange Postecoglou spice about the Celtic team.
Yeah, there was a complete lack of spice, and just thinking about Bodo Glimt as well, like, this isn't just this team that's just come in and out. They have been the champions for 2 years in a row. They get good results in the Europa League this year. I think they've done all right in the Europa League last year. So it's not as if they are just coming in and they're all of a sudden brilliant. Celtic are sort of developing as we go this season. And when you look throughout the team, a lot of them haven't played European football. And at the weekend, I went to the Sunderland game against MK Dons to see Paddy Roberts, obviously.
That was one. I mean, Jesus, why else would you subject yourself to that?
But watching the game, Sunderland had that big Ross Stewart up front, and MK Dons had some big guy up front and brought on Connor Wickham up front. Football was terrible, right? Absolutely shocking. A lot of long balls and that. Very little quality.
Admire your commitment to the meme, though.
Got to see him. And I was just thinking, like, this is what Matt O'Reilly used to play in. That is a huge jump going from there to Europe. And while Celtic are playing well and we kind of forget about this bedding in period, that whole team pretty much haven't got much experience in Europe. And it is a big jump going from playing Raith Rovers at the weekend to Bodo Glimt. While Celtic should have done better, it will be a learning curve for us. And I think this time next year will maybe be where Bodo Glimt are now.
So is that what you think killed us, Stephen, the step up in quality? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, for now I think that there are two things at play here. I think I agree with both points being made here. I think that Celtic are at the very, very beginnings of this journey, and I think it is important to acknowledge how far we've come in that space of time between getting pumped home and away against Sparta Prague. I mean,
COVID-ridden.
COVID-ridden Sparta Prague reserves
after the first
Still,
game.
though, man,
That'll never happen
that
again.
was abysmal. It was absolutely abysmal.
4-1 home and away.
Yeah.
That won't happen again. So we've come from that to coming up against the Norwegian champions in that space of time and come short so far. Again, Ange says it's only half time, but you know, the reason that people react so strongly to a result like that, even if you acknowledge it's half time, you react strongly to it for a reason, because you know it's very unlikely that will be overturned. I'm not saying it won't be.
I mean,
but
no away goals, but even still,
you
still need to beat them on aggregate, don't you?
That's it. So, but the other part of it is, and it's something you said, Jamie, as well, that just played quite strangely. It wasn't that all that familiar a performance. I think maybe if we'd played in a more familiar and energetic way, it might have been, I don't know if it would have been easier to take, but it would have been more explainable.
I think it would have been. I think just if we'd approached it the way that Ange normally approaches these games, you could have said, right, we gave it a good go. You know, I'm struggling to think of a European performance where you thought, oh, we were right unlucky there.
The crowd were quite confused at points, including myself. I mean, I can only speak for myself. I can only speak for myself, of course, but you pick up the general atmosphere. But see, we were sitting off quite a bit in midfield, and they didn't need any invitation to take that space on. So when that happened, everyone was like, what's happening here? We don't usually give teams this amount of space. So it was a wee bit weird like that. It was again, overall strange performance.
Do you think he got the selection wrong? There was a lot of people saying that the Roderick and O'Reilly thing doesn't work. I don't necessarily buy into that it doesn't work, as in you just can't pick these two guys, they can't possibly play in the same midfield together. I just thought Roderick had a terrible game, and basically you're a man down in that instance. Yeah,
he did, and it's that old familiar European thing with Tom Rogic. He's not. We're still, all these years in, we're still waiting for that big European performance from Tom Rogic. Now, he's not been completely anonymous in Europe, but he hasn't had that sort of definitive. But I mean, even guys like James Forrest and all that, like, he's had big European games. Even he was amazing against Bayern Munich a few years ago. Absolutely, like, unplayable is the term I generally hate, but it applies here. He was absolutely brilliant.
What an assist, didn't he?
Yeah, and. So he's never really had that. I'm not expecting him to turn up against Bayern Munich, but he's not really turned up against many of these sort of middle ground European oppositions. But I don't know about the balance. I would need to see it more often. I was surprised that Hatate didn't play, given how he's played. He and O'Reilly seemed like a good bet for it, considering how well they played against Rangers together. But that's in hindsight. I didn't say anything about it before the game. I wasn't really that bothered, because Tom Rogic has been excellent this season in spells and has turned up with big performances. So I wasn't that surprised to see him. I think overall it was, we recorded our At The Match podcast to go into it, which is available at patreon.com/20minutetims. And I came away from it and I listened to it back. I listened to it back the next day, and I sounded like a guy who had been waiting for a film to come out for years and went along to see it, and it was shite.
You talked about Alien, you talked about Prometheus again.
Yes. Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I went along to it, but it's not that I hated it at the time, it's that it took me a few weeks to realise it was crap. I kind of talked myself into thinking that was that all right, or did it really not make sense? And that's kind of how I was after that game, because I came away thinking, but it wasn't that bad. But so we could have done better there. But then in the cold light of day, it probably was quite a poor performance.
So what do we need to do, Melly, to get through this tie?
Hope and pray. I don't know. It's all the usual things, but we're going away in Europe to a plastic pitch. Like,
Yes.
against a good team. And Celtic's problem in Europe this season has been we concede far too many goals.
Yeah.
Far too many
I mean,
goals. It's two
was that 3 against Betis, 3 against Bodo, 3 against Leverkusen?
4-3 against
Aye.
4-3 against Betis, 3-2 against Leverkusen, a 4-0. Even Joblanek, we let in 2 goals going all the way back. So we are conceding far too many goals. But again, we can get ripped apart because it's a European game, but it's the simplicity of the goals sometimes. The movement was just too good. People switching off. Like Greg Taylor had a shocker. I get absolutely rinsed by that boy after all the fans were having a go at him. He just went past him as if he wasn't there. So you get punished in these games, but we can't go into European games needing to score 4 goals to win the game, because if we're going to come up against big teams, good teams, they will score against you if you give them chances. And we didn't even give them that many chances, but they just ruthlessly took them. And you're just thinking, if it was the other way about and Celtic managed to do that to teams, it'd be class.
Yeah.
But is that the difference? Is that purely the difference? Is it less, that was just weird and confusing? Is the fact really that it was quite evenly matched, but they scored their goals? They just took their chances.
I think that's what Callum McGregor said after the game.
Really?
Yeah, that was more or less his comments after the game. You know, we got into good scoring opportunities, good scoring positions, but we didn't take the chances.
Right. It's a bit like us. We expected Pater. We quite often create good opportunities for Pater, but miss quite a lot of them as well. So our XP is very, very high.
Aye, we often let people down. You often leave this podcast confused. Disappointed.
It's been a confusing week because you've got that Bodo Glimt game and you're like, maybe we're not quite where we want to be yet. And then at the weekend, it was obviously coupled with Rangers beating Dortmund. You're like, how the hell did they do that? Then you get to the weekend, you stretch your lead in the league, and you're like, yes. But I think what I said earlier is it was a strange game because they got goals at smashing times for them. Start of the match, so right after that, Celtic are chasing the game. We're at home and we're missing chances. Of course, myself and the rest of the crowd like, come on. And that's just the way it is.
I
Players
like his impressions this week,
You're like, yes. And you're like, come on.
I'm more rowdy at the game. And the one after half-time as well, and then getting it after we scored it just sucked the life out of it, because as soon as we got that goal from Maeda, you're like, right, okay, we've got minutes here, we can get on here and press on them. Then right away you're a goal down and people just go, we're not going to come back in this game. Now that's it dead. So that third goal was an absolute sucker punch, but it was weird in the sense that it didn't feel like a Celtic Ange Postecoglou team, but you're just like, it was a bad night at the office, but wasn't it even?
Do you think
that
so?
bad?
Before the match, there was bets. I think Celtic were the most bet upon team to win the conference.
Really?
Yeah, I think Celtic were the most bet upon team to win the conference. Part of that, it was there was a lot of talk that Celtic could get past Bodo and talk about booking flights, and we were ambitious. We were ambitious going into that game.
Man, should be.
You should be. Look, we still have the away tie. Patreon.com/20minute Tims. The coverage for that game is we're going to have Opposition in Focus, a piece of writing, an article by Keenan Foreman, who will look into the opposition. We are going to have live match build-up on patreon.com/20minute Tims. Us 3 live video content, bringing you the build-up to the game right up to kickoff. We are going to have a reaction podcast out after it, and we're going to have an article with player ratings and a match review. That is the coverage you get for Celtic away games in Europe. Patreon.com/20minute Tims. It'll be graphic here and a link in the bio. Just a minute. No, I can't. I'm hearing that Bolingoli's leaving the club. Can't.
Breaking? Is this breaking news?
Breaking news. Bolingoli's leaving the club. All the other nonsense aside, Stephen, about Bolingoli, Melly, and all the chatter online and all the stats and everything that you could talk about Bolingoli, the fact of the matter is, expensive but failed signing of the window, of Neil Lennon's tenure, rather, of many expensive and failed signings.
Yeah, and I think the risk of being controversial here, I think we as a support in general have maybe over intellectualized what is essentially just a flop signing.
Yeah.
The guy,
It was crap.
the guy came in, looked awful from the word go, and I won't hear any argument about that. He was terrible from the word go. People vastly overreacted to that. There was an overcorrection that said he was outstanding in this game, and the truth is,
It was the game at Ibrox when
game at
people
Ibrox,
changed their
and-
names to on Twitter.
Aye, and against Lazio, where I don't know, I barely remember his performance in that game as well. Huge overcorrection to that. But what you're talking about there is 2 maximum games out of about 30 or 40 appearances he made for Celtic, and he was poor. He was
Multiple
desperately
managers
poor.
have not trusted him.
Yeah. So I think we've overdone it with the stat stuff about how he's the best at going forward. He's the best in this position. He offers this. He offers that. Truth is, I don't know where the stats for that came from, because it sure as hell wasn't for Celtic. Where are these numbers coming from? Because he barely played in the last 2 years. It was a terrible signing, and I'm glad he's gone. Even if his greatest crime was being too damn horny.
The thing about it, right? It doesn't matter. Albion Ayeti could be a world class finisher. Bolingoli could be the best dribbler and crosser of a ball at the club, right? But they're not applying it. They're not. They're not applying that work to Celtic. They don't want to play for Celtic. They're not interested. So, I mean, Bolingoli is so far down the pecking order, it's unbelievable. Liam Scales has come in for the League of Ireland and just slotted straight in. Now, Liam Scales is he's a fine footballer. It is Liam Scales, but he's obviously applying himself. He's obviously earned the manager's trust, and it's something that Bolingoli couldn't do. And for £4.5 million, that's just it's mad to me that we just write off a player. £4.5 million flop. Albion Ayeti £5.5 million flop. It's crazy.
Barkas
£4.5 million flop. I mean,
they're the new Three Amigos, aren't they? The modern day Three Amigos.
Terrible, man.
He was a terrible player. To be fair to Stephen, his first, I think it was a European game.
Sarajevo, I think it was.
That guy's terrible. And you know that way you sign a player and you think, nah, it might just be a bad game. It's pre-season. He's in a new team and all that. But he didn't get that much better for me. There wasn't any games where I thought he was good. He had an assist against Cluj, but I can't really remember him doing anything outstanding. Just another guy, like even that game we get beat by Rangers just before the new year. He went into hiding. He had no guts about him. He didn't want to get back in the team. Neil Lennon bought him in and tried to offload him, and this is
he got chances again though, didn't he?
Yeah,
and just played a game.
Played 2 games this season, so but just out of necessity, really. But he didn't do anything in them.
But that was his opportunity. Ange always talks about opportunities, and you need to take it, and he was given it, and he didn't take it.
But this has been the problem, that Celtic were winning trophies, were winning trebles, 4 of them, mind that, and we were saying, look, as fans, we need to start getting things right, and signing of these guys like Bolingoli, Ayeti was because Celtic weren't getting things right. We see now with Ange coming in, this is a style of football I want. I think we mentioned it the other week there, like Liverpool and Pep Guardiola at Man City rarely sign flops because they've got players they want, and they'll come in, this is the position they're going to play, this is how I want these guys to play. Bolingoli, wasn't he a great defender? Wasn't he great at going forward? Played against Rangers the previous season, get absolutely roasted. He was getting powered on forums for looking so bad, and we rock up and pay $4 million for him. And
it's probably how we scouted him back then.
So you're looking at it going, look, what is this guy? Because he's not a guy that gets like Kieran Tierney forward. He's not a solid defender like Greg Taylor. He's just nothing really, and it's just an utter waste.
Yeah,
he was a bit of an enigma, was Bolingoli.
I forgot about the Horney thing as well. I was just thinking about performances.
For me, he falls into the camp of like the Derek Riordans, the Yuri Yaroseks, the guys that fell out of the team and their star grew brighter the less and less they played. And looking back at that COVID thing, that was ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Leaving the country under the cover of darkness to go and meet somebody and lie about it, and that just shows the regard they had for the club and the manager and the job at hand at the time. He just couldn't care less, the guy.
It all seems so quaint now. He just went out of the country, but what people need to remember is how big that was at the time. Just deigning to do that
and
off
lied
your own
to the
back.
manager. I think he was asked.
Yeah.
I think the story goes that he was asked by Neil Lennon, "Did you leave the country? Did you go on a flight?" And he was like, "No, boss." And he was like, "Well, what's this?" You know.
And then he came back and he was in the squad. He came off the bench against Kilmarnock. It was came off the bench and hadn't told him to potentially had COVID.
That's right. Yeah.
Episode.
It's just one of these. Not particularly Bolingoli, but it's just all these sort of remnants from that, they're like an archaic thing that just they don't match up to Celtic's values anymore. You know, these rubbish players that we've still got hanging about from the Neil Lennon era. Just clear them out, you know, find clubs for them. And I think we've managed to find that with Bolingoli. And on that Bolingoli bombshell, we shall wrap up this episode of 20 Minute Tims. Thank you so much to everyone who listens. Thank you so much to everyone who watches. If you listen, leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast. If you watch, please hit subscribe and that little bell thing, or leave comment in the comment section or something just to help us out on the algorithm. Melly, Stephen, would you like to say goodbye?
I'm back. I checked out there. I thought we were out on. Yes, goodbye. So I drifted off there.
Thanks for watching and listening.